Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Undercooled, a materials education podcast. This week is a very special week. It's one of the highlights of my personal year. It's the ASM Teachers Camp, and we have with us 4 different campers who have participated in this outreach experience to learn about what material science is, but I shouldn't tell their story. They should tell their story. So, Jennifer and Michael, thank you for coming on to the show today. We're very happy to have you here as guests. Can you first just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are, where you teach, and what brought you here?
So my name is Jennifer Huari. I teach grades K through 8 STEAM at Crescent Academy International in Canton, Michigan. What brought me here is my partner, Maria, who we do a lot of professional developments together. We found out about this training through our local MySTEM network, and we're always looking for engaging, hands-on, relevant professional developments that give us the materials and the know-how to take it back to the classroom. And this is something that allowed us to do that.
Great.
My name is Mike Romano. I teach biology, chemistry, marine science at Acton-Boxborough Regional High School, which is in Acton, Massachusetts. And I heard about this camp through emails and thought it would be a great way to learn more about material science and see how I could relate that to teaching high school.
Great. Well, again, very happy to have you here. Now, in the ASM Materials Camp, there are a whole bunch of different things that we cover over the course of this week. Can you tell us a little bit about what you learned in the camp? What were the most interesting or exciting or surprising things to you? And what were your big takeaways as learners in the camp?
So, one interesting thing, I teach about alloys in my chemistry class, and it's a one sentence or a couple sentences in the textbook and something we cover very briefly. And that was a great example of something we learned in a lot of detail here. We made some and we worked with them in the lab and we learned about them in class, and then we heard experts talking to us about them in the field and in industry. And so I just thought that was a great way of showing how this camp goes into a lot of depth, but also showed us ways that we can maybe, with whatever grade level we're teaching, use that information to help have deeper, richer understanding and also engage kids better in something that would otherwise just be, a small part of a lesson.
Yeah. So the most engaging thing or the most memorable thing for me about this camp, polymers. I don't know why I'm going back to polymers. I did an activity last year where students want to do slime. I'm like, okay, let's tie it back to standards. Okay, we talked about the polymer chains, brought a little chemistry of it, but even the activity when I did it, the goal was to allow them to have fun in class, make something, they can take it home, get a little bit of science. But even when I learned what we did here with the polymers, I have so much more to take back, but also how can we take what we know about polymers now, the funny things they do, what can we create with them, what innovations can we create, how can we create a new product, maybe to our new entrepreneurs out there, our little inventors, what problem can this solve? I keep thinking of this new product out there. It's like a slime type glob and you can clean your car with it.
Yes.
So it's something that, the students will see and they'll bring their background knowledge or their curiosity and their thinking, which is way different than ours, and take what we're showing them and they'll create something across in the middle. And it brought me back to the Shahani lab we went to, or the Sun Labs, where they did theoretical material science. He thought about, he theorized about a material, and then either they made it or they discovered it. I just thought that was just amazing. And I can see my kids with the way they think and how they're not closed into a box like adults are. They think differently than we do, the things they can come up with and create. So I'm really excited about taking polymers back to them in a new way for myself, and just giving them more and giving them a bigger opportunity to kind of take it to a different level.
That's all fascinating. I'm curious, how are you going to use alloys in a chemistry class? When I took high school chemistry, they never talked about alloys. I didn't even know what an alloy was. So what are you going to actually do in your chemistry class?
So I think the traditional line is it's an example of a homogeneous solution that, involves solids, and that would be it. And now I think we can use it to talk about metallic bonding. We can use it to talk about properties of materials and how you can enhance them for different uses. I like when we visited those labs too, I could almost see or help my students see themselves in some of those roles and pursuing undergraduate or graduate work in something like an alloy that might be something that interests them in class. But now you have the ability to go and do advanced coursework in that and actually produce something that maybe is an everyday item, or maybe it's something that we in our adulthood hasn't been created yet, but in their lifetimes it could be something brand new. So alloy would just be like the jump off point for them, whereas in the past maybe it wasn't that exciting. It was a definition or an example.
That's great. And I love the ideas with slime also, that you want the slime to be functional. You want it to do something. You want it to remove crud from a car. And so both of you are actually starting to sound like material scientists because you're not just trying to find some material you can buy off the shelf, but you're now starting to think about using material science to actually design a material for your needs, which is what we do all the time. So that's wonderful that you want to put these. So how exactly are you going to make slime functional? Has anyone ever done that?
Well, the product I was speaking of is actually a real product. I don't know. Do you see there are ads for it? It's like it's not a. It's the texture of it's a little bit more rubbery, and you rub it on the surface of your car, it picks up the crumbs, the gunk. You can stick it in the air vent, and it comes out. It's like a blob. And to me, I'm like, that's slime. Like, who would have thought about that? Someone did. They looked at slime in a different way and thought, how can I make money off that? And how can I, serve a need? And how can I get into those little spaces? Because we've all been there. I need something that can fit in there. It's almost like the kids who play with Legos and they know the piece they need in their heads that are sifting and looking. But it's, how do we give them these raw materials and these ideas, and how do you take it and make something new with it? So yeah, it's just, I'm just excited to see what the kids will do with it.
Yeah, and I love to hear the focus on your learners and how to get them excited about this topic, how to make them realize that there are opportunities for them in doing this. And so this makes me wonder about when you have not just your students, but when you're talking to parents, or I don't know, maybe you have friends as well. That must be nice. But, as you're talking to all these other people in your life, you're kind of an ambassador for the materials now. And so what's your pitch? What's kind of the takeaway that you've brought with you from this week of camp to say, oh, now I want to go and tell people about what material science is? What's your take on what our field is?
If you can think it, how can you create it? It's you have the building blocks, you have the materials. What's your idea? How can you? It's like a recipe. What are you going to cook? What are you going to make? What can you create? It's something that we do in class every day in STEAM. Is we create, we break things, we make mistakes, we create something new. And I'm just excited to get back in there and say, what can we do with this? Like, what properties does it have? Let's test it out. Let's try it. If it doesn't working, what is working? Get that, the engineering and design process in there and really see what they come up with, because they will come up with a lot of things.
It really does feel like it's the mix between science and the engineering, solving a problem, but you're using chemistry and physics in order to solve that problem. Maybe a problem with a material that we already have worked with for thousands of years, or maybe one that hasn't really been mixed together that way yet. And I like the mixture of having professors and teachers and actual in the field engineers here. I mean, everybody, I would imagine your other guests on the podcast too, we're all students once. So it's how do we introduce some of our kids to a field they may not know anything about. They need that exposure, and it's up to us to give it to them, and we can do that better by being here. So that was great.
Yeah. This week was my first exposure, and I'm really excited. And I'm not a student, so I'm just excited about how they're going to feel as well, to know that all of these fun things, it's actually a whole field, and I did not know that.
So with that, I suppose my last question is, if you wanted to pitch the camp to some of your colleagues or to a random teacher you meet at the grocery store or whatever, what's your sales pitch? What's your saying? How would you say to them, oh, you should totally go do this ASM materials camp that I did. Why should everyone come participate in this?
They're going to understand their own world a little bit more. They're going to have fun. They're going to have something to take away. It works with any age level, which is something that was really striking. Is I teach grades K-8. I can see myself doing something with any grade level. So it's not a high school thing, a middle school teacher thing. It's a learner thing. It's an explorer, curiosity thing. You're going to have fun. You're going to learn something. There were times in lab when we were like kids, like what station did we finish? Like, we want to go back. Can we do that more? And we were students again. And it was really exciting. If you don't think about it, just come. You're going to have fun. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience.
And I would add that summer is short. What you choose to do with it as a teacher is a difficult choice. And even doing PD, for a lot of people, they'll say, I can't do that. If you're going to, there's a lot of great options out there. So this is one that has fantastic funding. It has the ability to go all over the country. So you have places you can visit that are close to home or far away.
And virtual options.
Virtual options as well. That's right. Second level options too, after you do it once. And the conversations with other educators, the conversations with professors, conversations with experts. It's just and the networking is powerful. It was enriching. And so this is one you should consider and is worth spending 5 days of your summer doing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I think it's probably time to hear a few more voices. And so thank you again. And thank you for coming to the ASM Teachers Camp at Michigan.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Why don't you introduce yourselves? Let us know where you teach, what brought you here, and what was the favorite thing that you did during this teachers camp?
My name is Helena Krishna. I am a little bit of the odd one out in this group. I am an early childhood educator. I have been teaching first grade for the past 4 years in an urban charter school, and I am transitioning into a preschool itinerant position in Fostoria City Schools. I just kind of came across this program. The past year, I ran a STEM group in the after-school program at my school, and it's something that I just really love. And I came across this, and I thought, I have to do this summer. I have to make it happen. And so I signed up, and I kind of didn't know what I was getting into. I have a friend who's a metallurgist, and so we've had extensive talks about, very surface level of how things work. And I have a lot of science interests. And so I think just hearing what he had to say was kind of the big push that when I saw this, I wanted to know more. And so I just decided to come, and I wanted to see what it was all about. I really loved getting to get an in-depth look at the things that I had kind of heard about from my friend, and just understanding a little bit more of the science behind things and just the way that everything works.
Now it's who I am and why I came, correct? All right. So hi, my name's Paige, and I am actually going into my first year of teaching. And for me, I have been in the stage of brainstorming and coming up with ideas for what am I going to do in my classroom? What kind of science teacher do I want to be? What kind of science teachers are there? Do I like any of those? How do I figure out what I feel would be finding my style of teaching? And so for me, I came across the ASM Teachers Camp through an email through National Science Teachers Association, NSTA, and was really excited to see a workshop and a program for teachers to learn how to make science more engaging. And for me, that was enough to look into it and to ask, can I come? Do you have spots? And it wasn't very long ago that I planned to come, but I am going to be a 7th and 8th grade science teacher for a middle school out in Marengo, Illinois. And so I am pretty chuffed about what I've learned here, and I'm really glad that I found it, and I found my way out here to the University of Michigan.
Well, I have to go off script for a moment because I noticed you're wearing some incredible earrings. And I was wondering if you could tell us where those came from.
These I actually made today during our last day in lab. They are kind of a shrinking polymer. Some of us may be familiar with the technology known as shrinky dinks. I did them when I was younger, but this felt like I'd never done it before. And it was a really fun, creative outlet to witness the power of material change and utilizing things like temperature to result in, Helena made one as well. And creating a product like earrings, keychains, you have it. It was really fun, and it was approachable and easy, and definitely a fun thing that if I'm able to acquire a toaster oven or some form that I could incorporate this with my students, I know they'd have a blast.
Absolutely.
So I'm really curious. I always thought the teachers camp mostly approached people who were teaching high school, and you're teaching middle school and you're teaching first graders. That is so cool. So how are you going to bring some of this into your classroom? Especially, how do you get first graders? Will they even understand that material science is a thing?
Well, I don't think it's about bringing it to them in an aspect of material science necessarily. With first graders, it's about bringing it down to their level and making it digestible. And I think it's really important to still be accurate with the science that you're teaching them and not give them misconceptions, but to help them understand the way that these things work in a really simple level that they can, slowly over time build their knowledge and have a really strong understanding of science. I'm someone who I've been really passionate about science my entire life, and it can be really frustrating to me in early childhood education how much of a focus is away from science, how much that language arts and math are the focus when science is math, and you have to be so proficient in your math skills to be an amazing scientist. And even if you're interested in science, pursuing science makes you improve your math skills. And so I think kind of trying to, I think cross-curricular connections are so important. Bringing science into the reading that you're doing, bringing science into the math that you're doing, utilizing science in the artistic creations that you're making, because art is science. Paint is science. All of the materials that you use come back to material science. And so I think bringing it to kids, not only in a way that you are academically pushing them, but getting them to understand the things around them. Material science can help them understand everything that they interact with in their daily life. And I think that's such an important thing that is so easy to bring into the way that we interact with kids and bring them the materials that they have.
I'd like to kind of bounce off that. I know that since we just met here at camp and we're both hobby artists.
Yes.
And so for us, even for me, thinking about material science, what you were right about is that paint is chemistry, art, and I know you make glass art and ceramics and things like that. And so not only does it potentially open doors for students' academic pursuits in the future, for career and vocational advancement and planning, but also just building a greater awareness and appreciation for things they do for fun, for the world around them, and seeing that the topics and the hobbies, whether it's in art, whether it's in music, why their instrument works the way it does, why when you're in marching band, why does my flute sound weird when it got cold out versus when it's really hot, or you're an athlete. There's so many materials in sports, and we learned about that some more this week, and that's one of those big areas where a lot of advancements in material science land and get that monetary funding. And so I think, especially for our younger age groups, it's about building that awareness, that appreciation, keeping those doors open and opening as many doors as possible for them so that they can see themselves in so many parts of the world, in industries, in hobbies, in activities, so that they don't limit themselves more than we as people tend to anyway. So I think we're probably both in the business of opening and keeping those doors open for as long as possible. Oh, yeah.
I think that there's not enough education about what you could do with your interests. That there is like this, oh, you're interested in science, you need to go into this specific field. You're interested in math, like you either need to be a professor, or you need to be like some high level insane, but like you can utilize those skills in so many different areas. Being a glass artist and being passionate about that material, like I want to explore the science behind that even more. And like I feel like going to help me understand the way that I work with my materials. I want kids to be able to go into careers that are meaningful for them. If kids are passionate about sports, but they care about science, there's so much science within the protective equipment used in sports, within all of the tools that they're using in golf clubs, in padding, in all of the things that are in their everyday life. And yet they don't realize that that's a career path that they can pursue.
That's awesome. While you were talking, especially about the polymers, it reminded me of one of our alums who ended up doing fabric design using material science, Patricia Wilson.
Yes.
And I remember Patricia Wilson once doing an outreach program where she talked about polymers, but she started by drawing a little picture of a little goldfish cracker and said, "This is a myrrh." And then she drew a picture of a whole bunch of goldfish. And this is a polymer, lots of little mers. And so a polymer, your shrinky dinks, those are molecules that have this thing that repeats. And I'm wondering, can you teach first graders about atoms and the fact that if atoms arrange like the bricks on a wall in a periodic structure, you have crystalline materials, and then if they're all mixed up, you have a glass. And those have very different properties. But I wonder if you could start to introduce those fundamental concepts of structure, which is one of the pillars of material science, as early as first grade. Would they understand that at all?
I think that there's a really good place that could be done within early childhood education. You know, within the math curriculum, there's of course patterns that you have to learn, whether it's adding patterns, whether it's creating color patterns, whether it's understanding the numbers in a hundreds chart or anything and being able to apply that to multiplication. When we are using, you know, like those cute little bears that you used when you were in elementary school, and there's like a red and a blue and a green, and you're practicing building different patterns and connecting those in different ways and understanding that this chunk just continues to repeat. I think that you can take that and do an extension and kind of connect it to these things. You don't have to get so far into the technical thing that you go over their heads, but just bring it down to their level that they can understand that, you know, these repeating patterns occur in so many other places in the world, that there's so many utilizations that you can have repeating patterns be impactful, and for them to understand, even if you explained it as, you know, these things are made of little pieces that are in these patterned chunks that just keep going. You know, a lot of the patterned bears, the materials for counting and those kind of things are made of polymers. And so you can kind of tie in that material science of the things you have in your hand are made using the same kind of things you're creating with those tools.
And if you talk about the bears are very excited when you put them together and they're jumping all around, but then when they get calmed down, they shrink. And the whole polymer shrinks.
I think this whole thing has made me like rethink the way that we approach science in school. Curriculums are awful. Curriculums, I've thought about going into curriculum development simply from seeing how just not great some of the curriculums that we're given can be. And I want to make things that are meaningful and impactful and bring all of these tools to the teachers. They might not have the knowledge of these things, but if we can get them to have this background knowledge or this knowledge of these industries and how they're all connected, that the teachers could integrate these things so easily into the things that they're already doing and make it just so much more impactful with every word, with every activity that they do. You know, there's so many teachers that are already doing like slime making activities with their kids, and to be able to bring that in. And in the workshop, when they were talking about, you know, bringing out the strings that were all tied together and pulling them apart and how they all stick to each other and clump together, and you put the clip on them and they hold together even tighter, like that demonstration so easily could be brought to first graders to make them understand that that's why the slime making works. That's how the activator is bringing this together. And so, you know, you could go even farther in depth into the technicalities of how that works and why it functions that way. And we could still do the same activity and get so much out of it for our students.
Yeah. And not just in terms of, well, what grades could you make this work for? It also helps students with and teachers within individual classrooms, right? One of those big words that we get pushed at us and we learn during our programs is differentiation. Yeah. So you got to meet kids where they're at with whatever prior knowledge they come into the classroom with, and helping them see that no matter what you do or don't know before coming into a teacher's classroom, that you get the message that your experiences are valid, your experiences are meaningful, and we can work with that. And so material science, just at least from my experiences with this camp and from the master teachers and the faculty here at U of M, that there are ways of thinking that will allow any teacher of any grade with students of any background to meet them where they're at and to apply those principles with whatever curriculum they may or may not have a choice of using, that they can provide learning experiences for students that help broaden their conceptual understanding, their appreciation of the world around them, and that gives them linking points of prior knowledge. That's huge. And the more we can, as early, K-12 educators, the more background knowledge, the more exposure we can get, the more seeds that we can plant for our students, the more we can sow in later grades, the more we can sow in high school, the more that
Potential for
yes,
college.
yeah, the more if they go into a vocation, if they go to university, the more that they might have that moment where they go, oh, I think I remember something about this. And that there's something back there, the aha, that the more of those seeds we can plant, the greater likelihood statistically that we can get students further and further, because then their knowledge has a chance to grab onto something that's already there. And so it can't hurt. Expose them to as much as you can, and the more engaging you can make it, the more applicable and likely they are to remember it.
That's wonderful. You've perfectly set up the next question, so thank you.
Oh,
Which is that I think one of the great successes of the ASM Teachers Camp is that it also very much employs differentiated instruction. We have teachers from all kinds of different backgrounds, different levels of experience, different areas of subject matter expertise, and the master teachers who are running these camps, I think, do a very good job of making sure that they are teaching to each of their learners. And just as you're saying, meeting people where they're at and saying, you have this experience, you have this background, let's equip you for success in your school and in your context. And so with that, you also mentioned the aha moment, which we love to talk about. The aha moment. It's one of the most rewarding things in teaching, of course, is when the students are like, oh, and it's great. So with all that said, my question is to you, what was your one top aha moment from camp?
well, goodness. That almost feels unfair.
What?
One,
Only one.
I think for me, one of the biggest ahas had to do with how a lot of the demonstrations were kind of set up. It was more doing or showing us something and going, what did we see? What happened? What do we notice? What questions do we have? And I know my curriculum from having dug into it so far this summer, is based off of, that kind of 5E instructional model. It's been around for a long time, but really it felt like, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is how that works, and this is how it feels to be a learner in that scenario of, seeing a phenomena, seeing a compound get mixed up, or putting us all teachers in a space where we're all handed an object and we have to go to four corners of the room and decide whether the thing we're holding is a ceramic, a polymer, a composite, or a metal. And we go, I don't know what this is. And I don't know what a composite is. But you look around the room and you think, well, what do other people got? And so you're in that space where you go, oh, I don't have to know what I'm doing. And that's almost even better. That you can come from this place of going, that was cool. Yeah, you're right. I have no idea why it did that. That's okay. I'll probably learn. And they did a really wonderful job, our master teachers, of, I wonder if we could test that. And going, you're not
Why
gonna
don't you try it?
You're not gonna tell me the answer, are you? All right, I have to just do it myself. And so I think for me that was one of my numerous ahas of, I don't have to know what I'm doing. At some point, if you're doing it right, I'm now progressing from here on going, if I don't have a student at some point go, I have no idea why it does that, then I'm doing something wrong. Then I haven't shown them something different. And that then from that point, I can help fill in those blanks and help guide them through that uncomfortable place.
Productive struggle.
Yes, that productive struggle. So for me, that was, I would say, if I had to pick one of my top ahas.
For me, I think I kind of came here more for myself originally. And as Paige said, I'm a stained glass artist. I'm interested in materials. I want to know more about the science of things. But realizing that this applies to me, that even though this was designed for high school teachers to take back to their high school students, that I can scale this down to first grade, that I can scale this down to preschool, that I can make this happen and I can make it approachable for them, that I can take activities that we might already be doing and just level it up. There's always, when you're teaching, it's always about extending the lesson, making it more educationally impactful, making it just a better lesson. You teach something and you try to figure out how you can go beyond what you've done before and become a better teacher. And I think pushing materials science into the world of elementary education is one way to do that.
Right, we all use stuff made with stuff. And the more we learn about how that stuff works and how that stuff is made, well, the less blind and unaware we will be. And if that's the only thing our students get out of it, well, that still feels like a win.
So you said you like stained glass. You realize that some of the early stained glass masters from, 100 AD, all the medieval churches in Europe, they were doing nanotechnology. Did you know that? That if you look inside those glass, the different colors actually come from tiny little nanocrystals of stuff that they were empirically putting in. But now that we've looked at it, we realize it's all nanoscience because those little tiny metallic little clusters were able to absorb certain wavelengths of light and not others, which is why they're colored. So people have been doing material science long before we understood the science of it. And so it's kind of neat. And I guess first graders can probably relate to that because they'll be able to do material science, realizing they may not understand it until about 20 years later, but they're still doing it. And that's what's cool about it. You can make really cool things. So, but the stained glass story is really fascinating.
I think that's what really got me interested in the material science aspect of things is going through my glass minor in college and kind of talking about the composition of glass and the colorants used and all of those things and understanding the metals that are used to create these beautiful colors and understanding what things are going to have certain interactions has been really big in my glass journey. But, being here even, I feel like I understand working with my solder even better, realizing that the solder that I have using 60-40 tin lead solder, it's the way that it is for a reason. Like seeing that graph of what the eutectic point, and that, that is like percentages over what the range that I use for my solder is and how wonderfully it can bead. But using a 50-50 solder mix of the same materials works so differently, and the way that my patinas interact with my materials. And I had some amazing conversations with Tim trying to understand the materials that I'm working with and why these things do what they do and why it can function the way that it does. Why, I've seen other glass artists talk about, oh, glass or white glass is so hard to cut because it's just a pain, and that's all. They leave it at that. But I think, we need to understand the materials that we're working with to be able to better utilize them. Understanding that white glass and the particulates used to make the color and how much more dense the colorant is in the glass is part of the reason that it's harder to cut. And glass artists should understand what it is they're using and why it works the way it does.
I always love talking to people, about material science when we get to that point of, oh, now I understand why this thing in my life that I've been using or interacting with every day, that's why they made it that way, and that's why it behaves the way that it does. And it's just always so rewarding to get to that point of saying, now I understand the world around me a little bit better. Tragically, the clock says we have to stop. So, thank you very much for coming and being on the show. Very happy to have you as a guest today, and of course, as a camper all week. To those out in the audience who might be interested in teaching material science someday, if you want to get into it, regardless of where you're coming from, what your background is, do you teach first grade or 16th grade? It's all the same to us. We'd love to have you as a participant in an ASM materials camp. So once again, thank you for being on the show. And to everyone else out there, we'll see you next time on the next episode of Undercooled.